Hey kids, this is Chef Jack, and you'd better settle in because this one's going to be a long one. Of course, it's also kind of a silly one. These are my thoughts and ideas regarding one of the best regarded characters in all of children's literature, Hermione Granger from J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter novels. I talked to a lot of the fans of this book series online. I occasionally even geek out and write my own stories, and yes, I'm admitting right here, I'm a fan fiction writer. But talking to some of these people, I begin to wonder whether we're reading the same books at all, or if I'm just seeing something that nobody else is noticing. Specifically, like I said, I'm talking about Hermione Granger and her rabid, amazingly defensive fans. When I talk to these fans, though, it's almost like I'm talking to North Koreans who are describing their glorious leader, and that's utterly ridiculous. I mean, sure, Hermione Granger as a character was immensely loyal to her friends and was a selfless champion of the underdog, and was one of the best examples of book smart that I can point to in any literary source. But she was also surprisingly close-minded, she was arrogant, she was shrewish, she was dismissive of people who disagreed with her, she was superior, she was condescending, and she was unduly controlling toward her friends. I believe the word bossy would be the right term, except, it's now politically incorrect to refer to a woman as bossy, regardless of how bossy the woman in question happened to be. And note that I said book smart. When it came to real-world experience and how to apply what she learned in those books to reality, she actually came across as pretty naive and sometimes downright stupid. The truth is, the fans have distorted her character. Now, I remember how she was portrayed in the books, and I know precisely what she was. And all of you guys who cried foul right about the time that Hermione's portrayal in Half-Blood Prince and Deathly Hallows took her in a little, what you would consider a strange turn, when you complain about how the negative aspects of her personality suddenly appeared out of nowhere, well, no, they didn't. Hermione didn't change in those books. The very same characteristics she displayed in those two novels were always there. Always. You just convinced yourself to ignore them when they showed up in the earlier books. In point of fact, the very first time that Hermione Granger appears in the series, Harry Potter comes away from their meeting thinking, well, gee, she's bossy and annoying. In fact, those two words, bossy and annoying, are taken directly from the text of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Do you really think those personality traits just went away when she became Harry's friend? Hardly. Remember that bit in Philosopher's Stone where Hermione tried to force her own study habits onto Ron and Harry by nagging them? I do. As a father who has had to raise children by himself, let me tell you, you know what you get when you nag an 11-year-old? Nowhere. That's what you get. It's not like I don't get it. Rowling let us know quite clearly that Hermione had no friends whatsoever before coming to Hogwarts. The only thing she could do to get personal attention from others was win approval from the adults, her own parents and from the teachers. And the route she chose to get that approval was to be a suck-up and an intellectually snobbish overachiever. She definitely displayed no social skills whatsoever. And given all those character traits, could someone please tell me why the fans of the series insist that Hermione Granger is a kind, helpful, social person at the age of 11, while simultaneously considering the 11-year-old Harry to be a few inches away from basket case status, and the 11-year-old Ron Weasley to be a feckless thug? I mean, Ron and Hermione both hit Hogwarts with a burning need to impress others. Ron because he was living in the shadow of his siblings, and Hermione because it was the only form of affection she had ever known throughout her entire life. The difference was, Hermione Granger had already found a way to impress other people, knowledge and academic achievement. Thus, when she met Harry Potter, who, remember, was a celebrity so well known that a muggle-born, brand new to the wizarding world, had actually heard about him, she immediately tried to impress him by talking about things she knew about him. Now, she failed, of course, because first, what the hell did she know? She knew bullshit, that's what she knew. but also because she came off, as I have already noted, as bossy and annoying. The fans of the series like to bash on Ron Weasley for his character flaws, and this has always struck me as being amazingly hypocritical. Hermione Granger was easily just as bad. I mean, she was incredibly insensitive and jealous of Harry and Ron's friendship, mostly because Ron had done what Hermione didn't, and that was connect to Harry Potter on a personal level. Let's talk for a moment about the incident with the troll. Fans of Hermione Granger love to point out that Ron was being a complete and total piece of shit with his horrible rudeness to that poor, dear Hermione, what with his refusal to accept that she was just trying to help. Sorry, but I call bullshit. When Ron called Hermione a nightmare, quote-unquote, he was venting to one of his friends. Are we no longer allowed to vent to our friends? And did you notice that Harry didn't disagree with Ron? The truth is the truth, even if it makes a little girl cry. I'm sorry. It's cruel, but there it is. Should Ron have vented to Harry in private? Yes, absolutely. He absolutely should have said, if he had to say it, somewhere where she couldn't have heard it. Does that make Ron a horrible bully? Of course not. It makes him an 11-year-old boy. And historically, those are not known for their sensitivity and their care of other people's feelings. Anyway, let's set aside Ron Weasley's insensitivity for a moment, and let's talk about Hermione Granger's insensitivity. I mean, let's look at it. What drove Ron to say, it's no wonder she hasn't got any friends in the first place? Well, it was Hermione Granger showing up everybody else with her perfect use of the Wingardium Leviosa charm. You know, she missed the part where she was being a condescending ass who had already alienated every single one of her peers. And it's not just in this first book either. Looking on the latter books, you can see that Hermione Granger just doesn't have many friends other than Harry and Ron. Friendly acquaintances, yes. Admirers of her intellect? Sure. Friends? No. And why? Because she's a know-it-all, who lords her superior intellect over everybody. I mean, move ahead to third year. Hermione gets to show off just how insensitive and condescending she is. Let's start with Crookshanks. The fact that Ron's pet rat was a shape-shifted Death Eater is irrelevant to this next point. Hermione should never have purchased that damn cat. She had no idea that the rat was a hidden villain after all, and she certainly knew that cats hunted and killed and ate rats. So exactly what point was she trying to make with Ron when she not only bought a pet that could, and did, stalk Ron's pet, but got huffy when Ron complained about the fact that her lethal predator was stalking his own pet? I mean, I wonder how she would have felt if Hedwig, Harry's owl, had decided just suddenly, as wild owls are known to do in the real world, to end the existence of a rival predator by stooping on Crookshanks and killing the damn cat. You think she would have been upset about that? I think she probably would have. And she was also less than sensitive about the death of Lavender Brown's rabbit, for that matter. In fifth year, she was just horrible. Hermione was literally snapping at everybody around her. When Harry called her and Ron out for their arguing, she actually got angry at him for daring to call her out for it. And what did she do next? She nagged Harry some more, this time about his occlumency lessons. One wonders how Hermione would have done if Snape had spent a lesson calling her a bossy know-it-all, all the while taking a telepathic sledgehammer to her skull. But Hermione's tipping point was Half-Blood Prince. Harry was finally outshining her academically, Ron had found himself a girlfriend, neither boy was paying her any attention at all, and what happens? She turns into a jealousy-driven harridan. The potion book is a perfect example. It was just a freaking textbook with superior notes written in it. That's all. Anybody who's ever taken a college class and who has ever purchased a used textbook can tell stories about occasionally getting lucky and finding a book that had once been owned by someone who not only understood the subject a lot better than they did, but who took phenomenal notes and wrote them in the book. That's not cheating. That's just being lucky. But nevertheless, Hermione Granger was jealous because Harry was performing better than she was in a class. Now, I want you to notice something. It was okay for Harry to do better than Hermione in Defense Against the Dark Arts because she wasn't naturally talented at that subject while he obviously was. But potions? A subject that she was used to outperforming Harry Potter in? Oh, fuck no. There was no way she could accept that. So she returned to form and she started nagging at them constantly. And heaven forbid Harry and Ron have a problem with her nagging. Now, as for her abominable abuse of Ron Weasley, he had a girlfriend, remember? Lavender Brown, rather than bitch and nag at him and insult him, was actively flirting with Ron and showing an interest in him based on nothing more than she found him attractive, she found him interesting. For once in his life, Ron didn't have to do anything to get someone to notice him, other than be Ron. And again, Hermione wasn't having it. She continued to insult and belittle him, all the while complaining about his suddenly getting along with Lavender Brown. Ron made no promises to Hermione Granger. He was under no obligation to her. I mean, sure, she invited him to the Slug Club party, but she made it clear that they were going, and I quote, just as friends. Seriously, did she expect a teenage boy that she herself had described as having the emotional range of a teaspoon to be discerning enough to pick up the clues, especially since those clues were crouched in insults? If she was interested in him, and it looks like she was been interested in him for a long time, then she should have just said something instead of beating around the bush. Now, according to her fans, she's an independent, mature, strong young woman. But rather than acting like an independent, mature, strong young woman, she becomes sulky, weepy, and ultimately angry and physically abusive. Yeah, physically abusive. The ugly truth is this: when it comes to physical abuse among the three heroes of this particular story, it's pretty much always Hermione Granger dishing it out. And as with real-life cases where a domestic abuser is female and her victim is male, when Hermione Granger gets violent with Ron or Harry, she gets away with it, and the violent behavior is laughed off. This certainly puts all those fans of Hermione Granger who insist that Ron Weasley would turn into a wife-beater into a very interesting light, doesn't it? I mean, after all, Hermione had already shown herself to have a temper that led directly to physical abuse of her quote-unquote spouse. Okay, let's shift gears here for a minute and talk about Hermione Granger's constant need to always be the smartest person in the room. Throughout the series, she openly displays a need to be right, with absolutely no exceptions. When Harry found out that his new firebolt was from Sirius Black, for example, she just could not hold in that "I told you so." Now, given that they still thought Black was a bad guy at the time, it might seem a little warranted, right? Well, no. Not when Harry was refraining from pointing out how stupid Hermione was being about the house elves. She also couldn't resist using the "I told you so" line on Harry when he cursed Draco Malfoy. But, hey, Harry deserved it, right? I mean, he cheated by using one of the Half-Blood Prince's spells. And you remember when Harry found out the truth about Draco Malfoy and his own status as a Death Eater? You remember how Harry refused to look Hermione in the eye when he was telling her about it? Do you remember why he wouldn't look her in the eye? It was specifically because he didn't want to say, "I told you so." And on the subject of house elves, the narrative purpose of the house elves was to show us just how far kindness can go. Now, some fans have said that the elves are conditioned to accept their servile positions. Other fans have said that they were slaves. All of these are very possible. And Hermione's attitude toward the elves certainly reflect these opinions. But if you read Goblet of Fire, you find Dobby saying that he'd gone out and searched for a new job. When was the last time you heard a slave say, I need to go find a new master because I really, really liked working in them cotton fields? The problem is this: Hermione did not take the feelings and opinions of the elves into consideration when she was pontificating on the evils of their servitude. She came to a conclusion, she acted on that conclusion, and if the elves didn't agree, well, fuck them. She knew better than they did because she was a witch and they were merely elves. They were lesser beings. They were slaves, so what the hell did they know, right? I mean, she was being kind after all. But as C.S. Lewis put it, This very kindness stings with intolerable insult. The worst sort of evils have always been committed by people who think that they are doing what is right for the betterment of someone else. Even better, a lot of the Harry Potter fans who excuse this behavior in Hermione then turn around and imply that Professor Dumbledore was some sort of manipulative tyrant because of his greater good ideals. Any of this sinking in yet? I've spent a long time in this video ripping into Hermione Granger as a character, and as I'm winding it down, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. I am not doing this because I think Hermione Granger is a horrible character. She's not a horrible character. She is, in fact, an amazing character. She's fantastic. She is truly a formidable, well-rounded, and believable, strong female hero. She deserves her truly notable place in not only the history of children's literature, but literature overall. She's iconic almost. But what she isn't is the paragon of virtue that her fans want to make her out to be, and that is the entire point of this video. She's not perfect. Rowling succeeded. She created a true human being in this literary character. She's got flaws, she's got her sparkling qualities, and the true character is a mix of both. Now, in defense of the fans, I think that part of the problem is that they are incorporating their love of the films with their love of the books. And let's be honest, Emma Watson is nothing like how Hermione Granger is described in the books. Not only does she not look like Hermione Granger from the books, she never behaved like Hermione Granger behaved either. I mean, and it's not just her. I mean, let's face it, Snape was far too nice in the movies. And, Alan Rickman was far too charismatic. In the movie, Ginny Weasley just had a handful of lines. Daniel Radcliffe was too short. So, it happens. And to make matters worse, Steve Kloves, who was the main scriptwriter for the films, he kept stealing lines from Ron and Harry and giving them to his admittedly favorite character, Hermione Granger. He also admitted that he became convinced that Harry and Hermione would end up together. So he wrote the scripts from that assumption. Hey, well, I'm going to write the scripts, and hey, I know that Harry and Hermione are going to get together, so I'll just write them like, well, except no, that's not what Rowling had planned. So that's why, in the films at least, it seems like Harry and Ginny's romance just comes out of nowhere. So, once again, I'm not here simply to point out how horrible Hermione Granger is. That's not what I'm here for. I just want the fans of the character to note that she's not perfect, because she doesn't have to be. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you liked what I did here, please help the channel grow by sharing, liking, subscribing if you haven't already. If you really liked what I'm doing here and you want to give me a little support, I've got a Patreon link. It's down below. But even if you don't, I want to thank you for your attention and thank you very, very much for watching.